In this video, you're going to learn how to set up and run a geographic coverage analysis. This geographic coverage analysis is really about taking into account the capacity, the maximum capacity of each facility to attend to treat a given number of patients. This maximum capacity can be set based on the number of surgery blocks or the number of staff or other indicators. And it really tells AccessMod or restrict actually the extent of the catchment area in order not to be above this maximum capacity in terms of the population which is in this catchment. And of course, this computation is done together still with the analysis of the travel time and a potential maximum travel time that we want to set. So I'm assuming here that you've already done an accessibility analysis in the previous video and that you know already some of these parameters and settings. So I'm going to go through these settings and give you some hints about some of them. And if you want to know all the details about this module and the outputs, you can go to section 5.5.4 of the user manual. The first data set that I need to input is, of course, my population raster, because AccessMod needs to compute the number of person of your target population that is within the catchment. Then you need, of course, to select the land cover merge that you've obtained previously. And you see here it populates the travel scenario table with the different classes, the 6 classes found in this land cover merge and the name here. Now, because we have already done an accessibility analysis and already set up a travel scenario, we can find this travel scenario here. And if I select it, then its contents is given here in the scenario table. We've seen already the speed and the mode of travel. And we just need to click on the import content here button so that this value goes into this table. This table, remember, that is still, you can edit it, you can change those values, but we're going to keep the same travel scenario than before. Now, the final data set that I need is the facility shapefile, of course, on which I'm going to do the analysis. When I select this shapefile, I need to indicate the name of 3 columns within the attribute table of that shapefile. The first one is the unique identifier, an integer number. So in that case, this is my column named cat. Then I need the column that gives me the name of each of these facility, which will be very useful in the outputs, in the Excel tables, output of this analysis. So this is name. And then I have this kind of new column here, which is the capacity. I need to indicate to AccessMod the capacity of each of my facilities. In our case, this is the column named capacity. And if I go down and I look at the attribute table of my facility, I can find here this column capacity, and you see those numbers here, which are actually larger for the higher level hospital. And again, the way you get this number can be also quite complex depending on different factors, different characteristics of the hospital, and you really have to think about it and find a good way to do that. In the manual, we have an example in an appendix on how we computed those numbers. So now that I have selected my input data sets, I have some settings here. The first type of settings you already know. This is the type of analysis if you want an isotropic or anisotropic. If you select an isotropic, as we are going to do, that means that the slope can potentially affect and change the speed of travel for the population that is either walking or bicycling. And I'm going to choose towards facility because we are modeling the movement of population from their homes to the facilities. And now this is an important new aspect, new settings of this analysis. Because we really want to compute the population within each catchment, compare it to the capacity, and then if you want to attribute this population to this facility. The second facility that we look at, it needs to work on a population layer from which we have retrieved the first population that is already, if you want, going to the first facility. So this analysis is really an iterative process. We go from one facility to the next one, to the next one, in a loop. And so because it's an iterative process, the order, the processing order of the facility may impact the result. And so you have to tell AccessMod how this iterative process is going to be done. There are three possibilities from which you can choose to tell AccessMod how to do that. The first one is just by specifying a field, a column, in the facility layer attribute table. This is the default. And of course, if you choose that, you need to indicate which column. We'll choose capacity here. And you have then to decide whether the iteration will go from a descending order of the capacities or an ascending order. So we'll keep descending. That really means that AccessMod will look at this capacity table, will sort these facilities according to the capacity, and will start with the facility with the higher number in that column. So basically it means that we make the hypothesis of starting with the big hospitals under the assumptions that the patients will first or with higher priority will go to these big facilities and then might go to other ones. Then the second choice that you could have to give this processing order is this one, where AccessMod starts by computing a catchment for each of these facility and look at the population that is within each of these catchment. And then, of course, because it's a catchment, you can indicate a specific travel time for which you want to do this, this preliminary computation. And then again, an ascending or descending order, and AccessMod will sort the facilities according to that, and this will be the order for the processing of the facilities. Finally, you can do something similar, but by using a circular buffer around the facilities, for which you need to indicate a buffer radius in meters. Here, default to 5,000 meters. Now for this tutorial, for this exercise, we'll choose the first way, where we will sort the facility by capacity, and this will be our iterative order. Now here I need to indicate my maximum travel time. This is my maximum travel time at which I'd like to get my catchment. But of course, remember that if your capacity, maximum capacity for a given center is reached before the maximum travel time is reached, then the computation stops and this will be the catchment, a smaller catchment. If this capacity is not reached, the catchment will stop as usual at 120 minutes. Now a few options remain. The first three of them are selected by default. The first one is compute population catchment area layer. Of course, we want this shapefile, which will give us the individual polygons of the catchments for each of the facility. The second option is called remove the covered population at each iteration. This is the default behavior. So really what we want to do here is we go to the first facility, compute its catchment. Now we attribute the population within this catchment to that facility, and then we move to the second facility. But this second facility should not also catch or should not be attributed the same population than the first facility. So we don't want to count twice the population, once in one facility and once again in another facility. So what we do here by selecting this option is removing the population at each iteration from the population raster, so that at the next iteration, AccessMod works on a residual population. So we keep that selected. There are some ways, instances where you want to unselect this. And this could be, for example, in those instances where you are really interested in having the individual catchment at the maximum travel time, independently on the capacity. So you could set a very high capacity for each of your catchment, unselect this option, and then you would get the shapefile of each of your individual catchment. But for the tutorial here, we keep that selected. Now the third one is we can ask AccessMod to output a raster where we could see if there are some pixels that fall on barriers, but that have some population in it. By definition, if there is population in those pixel barriers, they could not be reached by the analysis and they could not be accounted for. So you might want to know where they are to correct for that. Remember that we also have a dedicated tool in the toolbox of AccessMod where you can correct the population that is on barriers and automatically put this population outside of the barriers around the barrier. So that's very handy, and we always suggest to do that, to use that tool before launching this analysis. Finally, the last option that we will also select gives you the opportunity to compute some statistics for your different zones or different administrative units, which can also be useful. If I select this option, now I need to go up because I have now a new menu, of course, where I need to tell AccessMod which is the shapefile of my zones, of my administrative units. It's here, we have only one. Then we just need to say, okay, which is the column that has a unique identifier for this administrative zone? This is admin code. And which is the column with the names of this zone? This is admin name. I'm now all set. I just need to write the name of the output, geographic coverage 120 minutes, so that I remember it's at 120 minutes. I'm all good. AccessMod give me some information, notably that there are actually 2 cells in which there are a bit more than 40 individuals, and they will not be accounted for in the analysis. In my case, this is negligible, so I don't do anything. I leave this individual not accessible. Everything is green. I'm ready to launch, and I can click on compute. Now, because it's an iterative process, it might take some time. It's a bit longer than the accessibility analysis, especially if you have hundreds of thousands or thousands of facilities. It might take a while. In our case, we have a small extent, small resolution, so this is quite fast. And after that, you will see that AccessMod is listing the numerous outputs from this analysis. I have 7 outputs here, some shapefiles of the coverage, some raster layers of the residual population, for example, and some Excel table with many statistics. Now, if I go to my data module, I will find all this result in my available data table. Remember that if I click on filter and then filter last analysis only, I can get only the result of my last analysis, which is quite handy. So now you can archive all these results in a zip file by clicking on create archive, and then export this archive out of the virtual machines into your machine, open the zip, and then open the various GIS file, the shapefile and the raster in your GIS package, and open the table in Excel. And if you want to know more and the details about these outputs, and especially about all the statistics found in the Excel table, you can turn to the section 5.5.4 of the user manual.